Good morning. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make gluten-free molasses cookies. This is one of the only cookie recipes that I have tried to make gluten-free, and it really turned out pretty much just the same as regular molasses cookies. So I'm going to be making that for you, and then I'm also going to be making a gluten-free chicken, bacon, ranch casserole that we're going to have for dinner tonight. So let's get started. First, I'm going to preheat the oven to 375. First thing we need is 3/4 of a cup of vegetable shortening. One egg. A 1/4 of a cup of molasses. It's probably gonna be the rest of this jar. All right, now I'm just gonna mix this up and then add my brown sugar. Now I will add 1 cup of brown sugar. All right, so far all of our ingredients have been naturally gluten-free so far. And now is where I'm going to use Walmart's, just the Great Value brand, all-purpose gluten-free flour. This is the only one that I've actually tried. I know that there are a lot of different kinds that you can try, a lot of different brands. But I've had really good success with this so far, and it's only like $3 for almost 1.5 pounds. So that's what I've been using, and that's what I'm gonna use today. The only thing I will say is that you use a little bit less than your recipe actually calls for. So my recipe calls for 2 1/4 cups, and I'm gonna start with like a cup, probably 1.5 cups, 1 3/4, and mix up the dough and see how it does. Okay, here's my first cup. Then I am gonna go just shy of another cup, so like a cup, 1 3/4 probably. Yeah, we're gonna start with that and see how the consistency is. It should be just like regular cookies. All right, one other slight modification I am making to the recipe. It calls for ground ginger, cinnamon, and cloves. Well, I am out of ground ginger, I discovered after I already started, so I'm gonna use some allspice. And it smells like ginger and cloves already, and so I'm just going to use a teaspoon of this and then a teaspoon of cinnamon, and hopefully that will be the same as when I make them with ginger. So we're gonna do a teaspoon of allspice, teaspoon of cinnamon, and then cannot forget to add my salt. You do need salt in cookies, believe it or not, to kind of cut the sweetness of them. Okay, and I'm just gonna mix it up and see how my consistency of my dough is. Okay, you can see how the dough has come together, and that does form a ball like cookie dough. So I'm gonna stop there with the flour. That was about 1.75 cups, and my recipe calls for 2.25 cups, so about 1/2 cup shy. And so now I'm just gonna roll these into balls, roll them in sugar, and get them on the cookie sheets. That was really close. I almost forgot my 2 teaspoons of baking soda, which that would have been terrible. Now this is not ideal to just mix it in like this, but it will work. If I mix it up well enough, it will work. All right, it's time to start rolling the cookies. And in my opinion, this is the only way to roll cookies, is to use a big scoop like this. And then you roll it, and you're gonna roll it in white sugar, and then put it on your cookie sheet. These cookie sheets are Pampered Chef cookie sheets, and I love them. I have 4 of them. They're really heavy, and my cookies always turn out great on them. Here are the cookies all on the cookie sheets. This recipe with the size cookie scoop I have and going a little bit less on the gluten-free flour makes exactly 2 dozen. So now I am going to I have a double oven, but I have an apple pie. Jason and I are going to some friend's house for dinner tonight, and we're bringing an apple pie, so that's in the bottom oven. So I'm only gonna be able to do 1 at a time. So I'm gonna set the timer for, let's do 8 minutes, because you do not want to overcook these or they will be crunchy, and I do not like crunchy cookies at all. So we'll start with 8 minutes and see how they do. Looks like 8 minutes was just about perfect. All right, after you've let the cookies cool for a little bit on the baking sheet, then you're just gonna move them over to a cooling rack, and you'll just let them cool. Then what I will do is I will put, I'll save a couple out for my daughter to eat, and then I will put the rest in the freezer, in a freezer bag or a container, and then they will stay good for a couple of months in the freezer, but they will be gone before then. But my daughter says these taste just like my regular molasses cookie recipe. All right, the next thing I'm gonna make is gluten-free chicken bacon ranch casserole. Jason and I are going over to friend's house for dinner tonight, so I'm just making this up quick for the kids. But I started with 1 super large chicken breast. You could use 2 smaller ones if you don't have a large one. And then I buy this at Sam's because I make my own ranch dressing. Now I will say, I mean, the ingredients are not fantastic in it, but it is gluten-free. And I've tried making the homemade ranch powder, and it just doesn't taste as good. So 1 envelope is the equivalent of 3 tablespoons of this, but I think I use 2 tablespoons because I always think it's too much. So I'm gonna use 2 tablespoons. And then just put a little bit of olive oil in with the chicken. And then that's just gonna sit and marinate for a couple of minutes before I cook it on the stove. And I have my water going for my pasta. This, to me, is the best tasting substitute for pasta that we have found. And I realize it is not the healthiest of, like, there are other kinds that have like chickpea flour, and we've tried those, but they just don't taste very good. And so this to me is the closest to a regular noodle that you can find, and it's I think it's just $1 something at Walmart. It's not that expensive, and it cooks very similarly to regular pasta. So I'm just gonna use this kind for all the kids. We only have one child who's gluten-free, but I think I can make this, and I think that none of the others will even notice a difference. All right, I just added about 8 ounces of the noodles to salted boiling water, and you can see they're a little bit differently colored than regular noodles, but they taste almost the same. Okay, the oven needs to be at 375. Got that started, and the noodles are cooking. And you saw me just grate up some cheese. We're going to add Alfredo sauce. This is from Aldi, and it is gluten-free and organic, which I don't really care about, but it is. The original recipe calls for you doing your own bacon, but I love to use this in recipes where I just don't want to do another step. So I'll just be adding this real crumbled bacon to it. And next we're going to cook our chicken all the way through. All right, my noodles are done, and I'm gonna put them just in, this is a little bit smaller than a 9x13 pan. But one thing also, whenever I'm doing a casserole with noodles, I like to undercook the noodles by just over half maybe, because I do not like mushy noodles in casseroles at all. Alright, while my chicken is finishing cooking, I'm going to add the Alfredo sauce. And I'm just going to guess about how much bacon should go in there. Maybe just a couple of handfuls. And I'm just going to stir this up. Alright, the recipe calls for a cup of mozzarella and a half a cup of cheddar. So I'm going to add some of that now, and then I will add the rest after I add the chicken. all the chickens in there, and then I'm just gonna add a little bit more cheese. I didn't really measure out the cheese because I don't feel like you should have to measure cheese. I feel like you should use as much or as little cheese as you want. All right. Now, just gonna pop this in the oven. Everything is cooked in there, so this is probably only going to take 20 or 25 minutes to get all bubbly and heated through. Okay, here's Jericho's plate. Look good, Jericho? Mm-hmm. Chicken bacon range casserole. Is it good? Mm-hmm. Ooh, 2 thumbs up. How about you, Journey? Is it good?
Yes.
All right, this new recipe, maybe we'll keep this one. Okay, tell everybody bye.
Bye.